What happened to Tengen? What about the Culling games? What about Takaba? Was Geto's body completely destroyed? Where's Gojo's body? Where's Shoko? These are some of the many questions people are asking about when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 269. Now, at this time, there's only rough translations, leaks, and spoiler images out, but more or less the whole chapter is out. People can find ways to read it, and it's quite the chapter. Because before we go any further, I do want to say that we only got like 2 chapters left. There is 2 chapters left of Jujutsu Kaisen, and the series officially donezo. It's gone. It's over. And there will no longer be JJK weekends, new chapters to look forward to. It will officially be over. And this chapter, chapter 269, really, it makes me question a lot, because there's a lot of people complaining about certain things. Like, you have people complaining about, like, Higuruma, returning back from the grave. Now, I like Higuruma. I feel like he has a lot of potential, and I felt like it was sad to see him potentially die when we had the whole Sukuna gauntlet. But the thing is, I accepted that he died, because it's the end of the story. It's the end. The end. That's it. There's nothing left. So, I accepted it, because it's the final arc. Character's gonna die. But Higuruma is alive. Okay, I'll get into that in a second. And then we have, Kusakabe. He's alive as well. And throughout the chapter, with all the little nitty-gritty details, not once, okay, was Gojo's body, or what's going to happen to his body, or how much he kind of offered to the team was mentioned. And I want to state this before I go any further. I'm not a Gojo fanboy. Hell, I don't even really care that much about Gojo. Like, I never fed into the super hype of Gojo, I'm gonna be blunt, but I enjoy him, okay? That's about as far as I want to give him. And the thing is that, Gojo, he died fighting Sukuna. And not just died, like, it's thanks to his effort, will, and facing against literally the King of Curses himself, why all the Jujutsu Kaisen sorcerers from, like, high school was even able to tussle with Sukuna. Like, the reason why they were even able to square up with the man is because of Gojo. But there is literally no acknowledgement of that within the latest chapter. In fact, you have the characters, and characters that didn't even literally have any relevancy in the fight, like Broom Girl, so to speak, saying, oh, I wish I could have done something, or I could have fight, or Hikari saying, I wanted to fight Sukuna next. I'm just like, Hikari, you were fighting Urame for literally an entire year, and you literally didn't even win. She had to default herself by rage quitting out of the battlefield. So it's like, yeah, no, Hikari, you were not going to be able to square up to Sukuna. Just going to be completely blunt. But back into the main point, you have a bunch of characters throughout the chapter basically saying they could have done better, the strategy could have done better, all this different type of stuff. And yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and all that. That's always going to be a thing. It is realistic. But it's like, they're all saying this, that they could have done something better. But it's like, you're forgetting to mention the reason why you were even able to pull off the fight in the first place was because of Gojo. And I'm just like, look, I know Gege, he doesn't like Gojo. I'm aware of this. I think the manga community, the JJK fan base, is aware of this. I understand. I can understand if he doesn't like a certain character that he written. That's fine. That's completely fine. But it's so crazy to me, just the characters is complete disregard. It felt like throughout the chapter of 269 that it was more or less Gege trying to explain his battle plans, tactics, and what he wanted to do, or what he was doing against Sukuna, than actually having the characters organically speak. That's what the chapter felt like. And it's a very questionable chapter, too, especially when it introduces a new conflict just to settle said conflict in the same chapter. And if you're wondering what conflict I'm talking about, and you don't know about this chapter yet that came out, basically, you have this new shadow style situation brought up, okay? It's affiliated with Simple Domain, which has been in the series for a bit now, but it's been kind of vague on what fully Simple Domain is. A lot of the community has actively discussed it and went into detail about it, but it was a very vague area. And obviously, Gege, the author of JJK, wanted to expand upon this, which isn't bad thing, it isn't, but the thing is like, the way he went about it is that he introduced this conflict with it, just to settle the said conflict in the same chapter, and it felt so random. It's like, why are you wasting your, like, last pages, your last few chapters on something that, let's be blunt here, is not relevant, unless you're setting up a JJK Part 2. That is the only way the content, some of the content within this latest chapter is relevant. Because it's like, new shadow style, Mei Mei settling it, dealing with this, and then, you know, Yui just basically saying I was the MVP, and all these different type of little details. It's just like, it feels like just such a wasted pages unless it's set up for something else. I don't necessarily know if we're going to get a part 2, but there is a few things to, you know, discuss when it comes to this whole situation. And that is the ramifications of the fight. So, obviously, this chapter, which was more or less just the entire cast discussing the aftermath of the fight, which, like I said, just did not feel organic at all. It didn't feel like the characters were speaking. It just felt like they were a mouthpiece for, you know, the author. That's literally what it felt like. But, you know, we have this chapter focusing on that, and it's just like, there's so much other things that he could be talking about. Like, the world now knows about Jujutsu sorcery. The world knows about, like, cursed objects and demons, etc., thanks to what Kinjaku did. We had the whole meeting with the United States and stuff chapters ago, and it was obviously building up. Like, the whole reason the Culling Games started and all that was, you know, Kinjaku's reasoning with Tengen and all that. And it's just like, there was a lot of setup for that. And, like, all that is not even being mentioned or discussed whatsoever. And I know that they're not the current pressing matters, technically, since obviously the characters are just wanting to reconnect and stuff. That's not a problem, necessarily. But it's like, you have a lot of issues within the story of the manga that needs to be settled, that just cannot be settled in just one chapter. I mean, there's only 2 chapters left. Like, we have next chapter and then the chapter after that. And the last chapter, let's be honest, is going to be probably some form of time skip epilogue. That's what it's going to be. Next chapter is probably going to be the final farewells of the characters, maybe doing their own stuff in their journey or something. That's what more or less, most likely, the next chapter is going to be. Unless it does set up some form of JJK Part 2. That's the only way I could see the chapters being a little bit different. But, we had, like, Mei Mei have a spotlight within this chapter, which just felt very, like, I'm glad to see her getting some, you know, I guess panel time, but it's just like, it felt very random as well. There was just a lot of things about the chapter that just did not feel good. Like, it didn't. And let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about Higuruma, okay? I feel like this is a big discussion point that a lot of people need to think about. Like I said, I like Higuruma. I'm a big fanboy of his character, actually. I'm a big fan. I liked his character since his introduction in the manga. But, here's the thing. He effectively died against Sukuna. And Gege was obviously glazing the man, saying, like, you know, he's as, like, talented as Gojo, like, you know, he's really gifted or whatever. That's what Gege was implying, okay? And obviously before that, you know, it was also implied that Sukuna apparently wasn't going all out. Like, he wasn't going all out, he wasn't really trying, all this different type of crap. You know, we all know this. I'm not going to get back into that. But the point is that, like, apparently Higuruma was the next Gojo. Like, he is gifted, and, you know, we saw him basically kaput. Like, he died. He got teleported off the battlefield, which obviously left his status in a vague condition, but it was implied he died. Like, even Sukuna assumed he died, because it's like, this man used, like, domain, he was using these techniques, a reverse curse technique and all that, just to be able to fight Sukuna, and it was the first time he was ever doing it. Obviously, his output and energy output and stuff would not be able to keep up. It's just, he would run dry very quickly. And so, the fact that he was somehow able to heal, thanks to being helped out, while Gojo wasn't, when Gojo obviously has higher level feats and scaling that we have seen, it's just so ridiculous to me when his whole body was obviously completely healed, but he was dead. This is not me being a Gojo fanboy and upset that he died. I know he was cut in half, but once again, you're not telling me someone that, like, Higuruma, that literally got, like, eviscerated by Sukuna, and then used all these techniques, that's not been in a lot of fights, somehow survives, but Gojo couldn't. All I'm gonna say. Anyways, with that being said, I do think that the Yuta stuff is incredibly dumb. very dumb. And I think that this is something that needs to be talked about, and a lot of people might not think about this, or maybe people do. I have no idea. But I feel like the whole situation with Yuta and him being back in his body with pretty much zero consequences is so awful. It is absolutely just... It's so awful, man. Like, let's explain this, why it is, okay? So, we had 10, 12 chapters ago, we had this whole situation with Yuta getting in Gojo's body, and there was a lot of fan discussion and theories and stuff that maybe Kenjaku might take over, he might get in Gojo's body, maybe, you know, Yuta will be taken over or whatever by Kenjaku, all these different type of theories and stuff. You know, we didn't know the full extent of Kenjaku's curse techniques and how he transfers from one body to another and all that. You know, we didn't know the full extent of everything. And hell, this chapter could have been a good chapter to explain that instead of focusing on something like new shadow style or whatever. This random new conflict that was introduced. The chapter could have been focused on explaining Kenjaku's technique, what's going to happen with the calling games and all that, since technically it's supposedly going to be indefinitely ongoing until, like, all the participants die or something. You know, the ramifications of Tengen, what's going on with that. You know, so many things. But we had the chapter mostly dedicate itself to explaining simple domain, new shadow style, and just, like I said, the characters unorganically talking with the audience, saying this is what we could have done better. It just... I don't know how to feel about this chapter, man. Like, it is such a questionable chapter of JJK. I don't know really what to think, because it's like the only way I could look at these chapters positively is that this is setting up for a part 2. But if it is setting up for a part 2, honestly, it makes me look at everything in a little bit more of a negative light. Because it's like, if it is part 2 sequel bait that's being ongoing right now, it's like, you didn't need to rush everything. Hell, just put things on a cliffhanger, like Sukuna wins or something. Just put it on a cliffhanger, and if you wanted to bring characters back, bring them back later on, after like a time skip or something. But, you know, obviously, I don't think we are getting a part 2. I mean, there's a possibility. It's a popular product, okay? I know Shonen Jump views it as a very popular product that sells, okay? It does. And they might try, but at this current time, it just doesn't feel that way. And it's like, if it does go that way, it feels like this conclusion here would be even worse if it wasn't going to end. That's all I'm gonna say. But I'll leave it at that. That's my piece. That's how I feel about the chapter. I mean, it's okay. It could be a lot worse, honestly. I've seen a lot worse. It could be a lot worse, but I feel like this chapter does a lot of things that just feel very random, and there was a lot of time wasting in these chapters, or this chapter, that just didn't need to be there. But okay, be safe, stay healthy, and I love you guys. Chibi out.